Imagine this, you're a billionaire, and you walk into your luxurious mansion to find your chauffeur, a black man, dancing with your paralyzed daughter. You're shocked, speechless, but what happens next will surprise you beyond belief. Stay tuned for the incredible turn of events. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when billionaire businessman Charles Winters pulled into the long, winding driveway of his expansive mansion. The sound of his luxury car's tires rolling over the smooth pavement echoed through the quiet estate as he drove up to his home. A long day of back-to-back meetings, conference calls, and endless decision-making had left him feeling drained. Still, as he approached the grand front entrance, the sight of his mansion, nestled in a serene part of the countryside, gave him a sense of comfort. Charles had it all: wealth, influence, and recognition. He was a man who had worked his entire life to build an empire, and now, at the peak of his career, he seemed to have everything he could ever want. But despite his successes, there was one thing he couldn't control, one thing that money couldn't fix: his daughter, Sophie. Sophie, his only child, was born with a rare condition that left her paralyzed from the waist down. Despite her bright smile and infectious laughter, Sophie's life was far from what other children experienced. She spent much of her time in a wheelchair, unable to run or play like her peers. It had always saddened Charles to watch his daughter's spirit remain trapped in a body that couldn't fully keep up with her energetic heart. As a devoted father, Charles spared no expense to provide for Sophie's needs. He enlisted the best doctors, the most advanced therapists, and even customized equipment to make her life easier. Yet, no matter how much he invested in her well-being, something remained elusive: a deeper sense of joy and freedom that Sophie couldn't seem to reach on her own. Charles had always been mindful of Sophie's emotional and social needs. That's why he carefully selected a team of caregivers and staff who could connect with her. One of them was Smith, the Winters family chauffeur. Smith was a quiet, humble man, known for his punctuality and gentle nature. He wasn't just an employee, he quickly became a trusted part of the family. His ability to make Sophie laugh, to lift her spirits when she felt down, was something that no one else could do. There was a natural bond between the two. Smith never treated Sophie any differently because of her condition, and his deep respect for her made him a favorite in the Winters household. But on this particular afternoon, as Charles stepped out of his car, unaware of what he was about to witness, something extraordinary was about to unfold. As Charles stepped through the grand entrance of his mansion, the usual silence of the house was replaced with a sound that stopped him in his tracks. Laughter. It was Sophie's laugh, unmistakable, but there was something different about it. It wasn't the quiet giggle he'd grown accustomed to. It was loud, carefree, and filled with an energy that made it impossible not to notice. A sense of warmth washed over him, but also a tinge of curiosity. What was going on? The laughter echoed through the spacious hallways, drawing Charles's attention toward the living room. His steps quickened, wondering what had Sophie so full of joy. He rounded the corner, expecting to see her with one of her caregivers, perhaps playing with a toy or watching her favorite TV show. But what he saw when he entered the room took him completely by surprise. In the middle of the expansive living room, bathed in soft, golden light from the large windows, stood Smith, the chauffeur. But Smith wasn't just standing there. With a wide, genuine smile on his face, he was twirling Sophie around in her wheelchair. It wasn't just a simple push or a ride, it was a dance. Smith's hands were gently guiding the wheelchair as he moved in time with Sophie's laughter. Sophie, her eyes sparkling with joy, was clapping her hands in rhythm, her face lit up with a joy that Charles hadn't seen in a long time. She was so happy, so alive, as though nothing in the world mattered except that moment. Charles stood frozen in the doorway, completely taken aback. For a few seconds he couldn't move, his mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. His daughter, who had always faced physical limitations, was dancing. She was experiencing freedom, something Charles had always feared she might never know. And what was even more surprising was that it wasn't a traditional dance at all, it was something far more beautiful. It was the bond between Smith and Sophie, an unexpected moment of pure joy, woven together by laughter and trust. Charles's initial shock gave way to confusion. Was this appropriate? Was this too much? But then, as he continued to watch, a strange feeling of admiration crept in. This wasn't just Smith pushing Sophie's wheelchair, it was Smith giving Sophie something that no therapy or medical breakthrough could offer. He was offering her the freedom to experience life in a way that was unique and pure. The dance wasn't just a physical act. It was a symbolic gesture of what could be possible. Despite the limitations. In that moment, Charles realized something powerful. Smith had unlocked a part of Sophie's spirit that he, as her father, had been struggling to reach. Charles stood in the doorway, unable to believe what he was witnessing. His mind raced with thoughts and questions. Was this inappropriate? Had Smith, his trusted chauffeur, crossed a line? As a father, it was natural for Charles to feel protective, especially when it came to his daughter. Sophie had faced so many challenges in her life, and he had always tried to shield her from the cruelty of the world. Seeing this unexpected moment made his instincts flare. Was this behavior too forward? Was Smith taking liberties? But as Charles watched the scene unfold before him, something inside him shifted. He realized that what he was seeing wasn't just a spontaneous act of fun. It was something deeper, something more meaningful. Smith wasn't just dancing with Sophie for the sake of it. He was giving her something priceless. In a way that no doctor, therapist, or equipment could, Smith was allowing Sophie to experience life differently. He wasn't focusing on her disability. He was focusing on her ability to feel joy, to feel like a normal child. If only for a moment. Before Charles could gather his thoughts and speak, Smith, who had been so caught up in the moment with Sophie, turned and saw Charles standing at the doorway. His eyes widened in shock, and he froze in place, his body tense. Sophie, noticing her father's presence, looked up at him, her face lighting up with a wide grin. "Daddy! Look, Smith's teaching me to dance." Sophie's voice rang out, full of excitement and pride. Her words were innocent, unburdened by the thought of what might have been deemed inappropriate. She was just happy, in that moment, like any child would be. Charles walked over slowly, still trying to process what he had just seen. His steps were deliberate, though his mind was in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He looked at Smith, who was still standing there, looking down at the floor, clearly unsure of how to react. "Smith," Charles finally spoke, his voice calm but laced with uncertainty. "What's going on here?" Smith, clearly flustered, hesitated for a long moment before speaking, his words soft and filled with sincerity. "Mr. Winters, I didn't mean to overstep. I just wanted Sophie to feel like she could dance, even if it's not in the way most people do." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the vulnerability of his heart. He looked up briefly, meeting Charles's gaze, and then quickly looked away, unsure of what to expect. There was a heavy silence in the room. Charles stood still, absorbing the weight of what Smith had just said. His eyes moved from Sophie, glowing with joy and blissful innocence, back to Smith, who was standing in front of him with no hint of arrogance, only the quiet humility of someone who had acted out of kindness and empathy. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity. Charles didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood there, processing the complexity of the situation. He had never imagined his daughter would have a moment like this, a moment where she was so free, so happy, in the way that other children were. And it was Smith, someone he'd considered a mere employee, who had given that to her. Charles took a deep breath, his thoughts still swirling. Then, in an unexpected turn, he did something no one could have predicted. Charles stood still for a moment, taking in the scene before him. As he watched Sophie's glowing face, her smile infectious. As she clapped her hands, it was like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had always been so fixated on providing for Sophie, trying to fix her condition, trying to find a way to make her life as normal as possible. But in doing so, he had overlooked the most important thing of all, the simple joy of living. Charles approached Smith and Sophie slowly, his face softening. There was a profound change in his demeanor as he finally spoke, his voice calm but deeply emotional. "I see the joy in her eyes," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on Sophie's radiant face. "Maybe I've been so focused on fixing her situation that I forgot the most important thing, giving her the chance to live a little, to feel joy." His voice was almost a whisper, as though he were reflecting aloud, realizing something he had missed for so long. Turning to Smith, Charles's tone shifted. It was no longer filled with the hesitation or confusion that had previously clouded his mind. Now, his voice was composed, filled with clarity. "What you've done for Sophie today, what you've given her, is priceless," he continued. "I've spent years trying to buy happiness for her, but it turns out all she needed was someone who saw her for who she truly is." Charles paused for a moment, locking eyes with Smith. He could see the deep sincerity in his chauffeur's face, the humility in his posture. It was as though Smith had given Sophie a gift that money could never buy: freedom, joy, and a sense of normalcy. With a deep breath, Charles said, "You've given my daughter something I could never have given her on my own. For that, you've earned my deepest respect." The words hung in the air, a moment of true connection between father and employee. A moment of profound understanding. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't become any more surprising, Charles made a decision that left everyone speechless. "You know what, Smith?" Charles said, his voice taking on an authoritative yet kind tone. "You're not just a chauffeur anymore. I want you to be a part of our family, a part of this business. I'll make sure you're taken care of, no more just being a driver. You deserve more than that." Smith's eyes widened in disbelief. He was speechless, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. "Mr. Winters, I don't know what to say." His voice cracked slightly, a mixture of shock and gratitude in his expression. Charles smiled warmly at him. "There's nothing to say, it's just the right thing to do." It was a moment that changed everything. Smith, a man who had always quietly gone about his work with humility and grace, now stood at the precipice of a life-changing opportunity. Charles's words were a testament not only to the bond he had with his daughter, but also to the genuine, heartwarming act of kindness that had touched his soul in ways he never expected. In the days that followed, Smith's life underwent a transformation that he had never imagined. What began as a simple act of kindness, a moment of shared joy with Sophie, quickly blossomed into something much larger. Charles Winters, a man known for his business acumen and hard-driven nature, had recognized the value Smith brought to his family, not just as an employee, but as a compassionate and genuine person. Smith was no longer just a chauffeur. He was invited to be a part of the Winters family in a way that went far beyond his job description. His role expanded into the company's philanthropic efforts, where he became actively involved in helping manage charity events and outreach programs. Charles made sure to include him in important decisions, particularly those aimed at improving the lives of others. Smith's insights and deep understanding of people, honed from years of humility and service, were invaluable. He quickly became a trusted voice in the Winters business, one who understood the power of giving back and enriching lives beyond just financial success. Smith's single quotes S bond with Sophie continued to deepen. Together, they found new ways to bring joy into her life, whether it was through outdoor activities, learning new hobbies, or simply spending time together. Smith became more than a friend. He was a true mentor, someone who inspired Sophie to embrace her life and all the possibilities within it, no matter the challenges she faced. For Charles, the impact of that single dance in the living room echoed far beyond that moment. He began to view the world through a new lens. No longer did he define wealth by his financial empire. Instead, he realized that the true value of life came from the relationships he nurtured and the happiness he could share with others. The joy that Smith had brought to Sophie, the laughter they shared, was worth more than any amount of money he had accumulated. That dance, that beautiful moment of freedom in the living room, became a symbol for Charles and for Smith. It was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected and simple moments can lead to life-altering changes. Smith, once just a driver, had found a place where he was truly valued, not just for his skills, but for the heart he brought to his work. It was a powerful testament to the fact that genuine kindness and connection could transform lives in ways money never could. This heartwarming story shows us that kindness and empathy can transform lives in ways money never could. If you enjoyed this touching story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heartwarming moments like this.